The stadium lights hummed overhead with an electric buzz, casting a blinding, artificial glare on the thousands of graduates sitting in rows of uncomfortable folding chairs. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of cheap hairspray and anticipation. I stood on the podium, the golden tassel of my cap ticking rhythmically against my cheek in the gentle breeze of the industrial fans. The dean's voice boomed through the speakers, echoing off the concrete walls like the voice of judgment. Azura, graduating magna cum laude. It was a title I had practically starved myself to achieve. I had worked 2 grueling jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, and surviving on instant noodles and stale coffee just to pay for my tuition and rent. My stomach rumbled, a reminder of the breakfast I had skipped to afford the gown rental. I accepted the diploma, feeling the heavy, textured paper in my hand, the tangible proof of my survival, and shook the dean's hand. I kept my smile plastered on for the flashing cameras, but my eyes were busy scanning the 3rd row of the bleachers. That was the section reserved for family. It was the spot I had circled in red marker on the map I sent him 3 months ago. It was the spot I had reminded him about every week for the last year. It was empty. A single blue plastic seat sat vacant among the cheering parents, crying mothers, and proud siblings. It looked like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, hollow rhythm that mocked my foolish hope. I walked off the stage, clutching the proof of my hard work, and discreetly checked my phone hidden in my sleeve. There was a single text from Dad. "Server queue is finally moving. Raid starts in 5. Grats on the school thing." He wasn't stuck in traffic. He wasn't in the hospital. He was sitting in his underwear, exactly 3 miles away, preparing to slay a virtual dragon while his real daughter accomplished the biggest milestone of her life. My name is Azura, and that empty seat was the moment I decided to delete him from my life. I didn't go to the graduation party where my classmates were popping champagne and hugging their parents. I couldn't bear the pitying looks when people asked where my father was, or the shame of having to lie and say he was sick. Instead, I drove straight to his rental house, still wearing my ceremonial gown and cap, the fabric rustling around my ankles like a whisper of judgment. I needed him to say it to my face. I needed to see the choice he had made with my own eyes, to burn the image into my brain so I would never hope again. I let myself in with my spare key. The air inside hit me like a physical wall. It smelled stale, a suffocating mixture of old pizza boxes, damp laundry that had been left in the washer too long, and sour energy drinks. The blinds were drawn, plunging the house into a perpetual, depressing twilight. I marched to the den, the heart of his darkness. I found Torin sitting there, illuminated only by the blue light of 3 massive monitors. He was screaming at his glowing screen, a heavy, expensive headset clamped over his ears. He didn't even turn around when I entered the room. "You're blocking the screen, Azura. Move, I need to heal the tank," he shouted, his voice cracking with intensity, his eyes glued to the flashing pixels of a fantasy world. I stood my ground, casting a long, dark shadow over his game. When the round finally ended, he spun his ergonomic chair around, looking annoyed rather than apologetic. He wiped Dorito dust on his sweatpants. "It's just a ceremony, Azura. You got the paper, didn't you? Stop being so dramatic. This raid drops legendary loot that I've been farming for months. Do you know how rare this drop rate is?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized there was nothing there for me. No pride, no love, just addiction masked as a hobby. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply took my house key off my ring, dropped it onto his cluttered desk with a metallic clatter, and walked out the door. I didn't speak to him for 5 years. I blocked him on every social media platform, every email address, and every phone number I had. I erased him from my digital existence. I built my life from scratch, brick by brick, fueled by a burning, white-hot need to prove that I didn't need him. I channeled my anger into my career, working late nights and weekends, taking on the projects no one else wanted. I eventually became a lead architect at a prestigious firm run by Delphine, a fierce, no-nonsense woman who actually appreciated my relentless work ethic and eye for detail. I bought my own house, a stunning mid-century modern renovation that I designed myself. I knocked down walls, installed floor-to-ceiling windows, and created a sanctuary of light and order. It was peaceful, clean, and completely devoid of screaming gamers and flashing screens. I was happy. I was free. I had a fiancé, Rafferty, who respected me. I had a life that was mine. Then the bubble burst. A random number called me at 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday during a heavy thunderstorm. The rain was lashing against the glass, matching the turmoil that was about to enter my life. I usually ignored unknown numbers, but something in my gut, a cold, sinking feeling, told me to answer. It was Nerissa, my stepmom. Her voice was trembling, thick with tears and rising panic. "He's on the street, Azura. You have to help us. Please pick up." I sat up in bed, the silence of my beautiful home suddenly feeling heavy and oppressive. "What do you mean, on the street?" I asked coldly, clutching the high thread count duvet I had bought with my own money. "He lost the house," she sobbed. "He's sleeping in his car, Azura. It's freezing outside. The repo men are looking for the car, too." Part of me wanted to hang up, to retreat back into the safety of the life I had built. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I needed to know how he had fallen so far. I agreed to meet Nerissa the next morning at a coffee shop halfway between my office and the shelter she mentioned. The rain had stopped, leaving the city gray and damp. She looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. Her hair was graying at the roots, and her clothes looked worn and unwashed. She ordered a black coffee because she couldn't afford the latte. Over the steaming cup, she explained the collapse of their life. Torin had lost his job 3 years ago. Apparently, his boss had caught him playing World of Warcraft during important Zoom meetings not once, but 5 times. He was fired for gross misconduct and negligence. Instead of looking for new work or retraining, he treated unemployment like a paid vacation to game full-time. He told Nerissa he was networking online. "I tried to support us," Nerissa whispered, wiping her red-rimmed eyes with a rough napkin. "I worked double shifts at the diner, but I found out last month that he had drained our joint savings account. $40,000 Azura, gone." I stared at her, horrified, my coffee cup pausing halfway to my mouth. "What did he spend 40 grand on?" I asked, my voice hushed. "Skins," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Virtual currency, rare mounts, digital swords. He called it digital assets. He said they would appreciate in value like crypto. I couldn't take it anymore. I kicked him out." The irony was bitter and sharp. He was currently parked in a sedan outside the very university where he had missed my graduation, using their free public Wi-Fi to keep playing on a battered laptop. He had chosen the game over his job, his wife, and his home. And now, the game was the only thing he had left. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a diner near my office. I told myself it was strictly to tell him no to his face, to give him the closure I never got 5 years ago. I wanted him to see the architect, the homeowner, the success story he had ignored. When he walked in, the smell hit me first, a pungent wave of unwashed clothes, stale sweat, and desperation. I barely recognized him. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. But the moment he spoke, I knew the arrogance was perfectly intact. He slid into the booth opposite me and gestured toward the window where my sleek luxury car was parked. "Nice car," he sneered, picking up the menu without saying hello or making eye contact. "Must be nice to have money. I guess architecture pays better than I thought." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize for the last 5 years of silence. He didn't ask about my life. "Look, Azura, I just need a room for a few weeks. Nerissa is being unreasonable about a small investment I made. She doesn't understand the market. It's a temporary liquidity issue." I stared at him, incredulous. He was calling gambling away their life savings on video game cosmetics and investment. He truly believed he was the victim in a tragedy he had written himself. "I'm not running a hotel, Torin," I said sharply. "And you aren't an investor, you're an addict." I refused him outright. The words felt good coming out of my mouth, solid and heavy. "You missed my graduation for a game," I reminded him, my voice rising slightly as the memory resurfaced, stinging like a fresh cut. "You don't get to stay in the house that my degree paid for. That's not how this works. You made your choice 5 years ago when you sat in that chair and raided instead of watching me walk." Torin slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to rattle and the coffee to spill onto the laminate table. "I raised you," he shouted, drawing the attention of the entire diner. "I put a roof over your head for 18 years. I fed you. You owe me this." People were staring now, whispering behind their hands. The waitress paused, pot in hand, watching us. Torin didn't care about public embarrassment. He only cared about getting what he wanted. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing, playing the ultimate card he knew would hurt me. "You think you're so high and mighty," he hissed, spittle flying from his lips. "But your grandfather Eldrick would be ashamed of you right now. Turning your back on family, he would be disgusted with you. He was a man of honor, and you're just a selfish brat." The mention of Eldrick hit a nerve deep inside me. I idolized my grandfather. He was the only honorable man I had ever known. Torin knew that, and he was using a dead man's memory to manipulate me into submission. It was low, even for him. "Don't you dare speak for him," I warned, my hands shaking under the table. I left the diner, trembling with rage, and immediately drove to the nursing home where Grandpa Eldrick lived. I needed the truth. He was frail now, his body withering away, his memory fading in and out like a bad radio signal, but he still had his sharp moments. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know if I was truly being heartless. After some small talk about the weather and his lunch, I mentioned Torin's situation. Eldrick was silent for a long time, his watery blue eyes staring out the window at the garden. Then he turned to me, his expression full of sorrow. He revealed a secret that changed everything. "Azura," he wheezed, his voice raspy and thin. "I left you a college fund, $20,000. It was supposed to be yours when you turned 18. I saved it for years." I frowned, confused. "Grandpa, I paid for college with loans and waitressing tips. I worked at the burger joint for 4 years. I never got a fund." Eldrick sighed, a sound full of deep regret that rattled in his chest. "Your father told me you decided not to go to college. He said you wanted to travel, to find yourself. He had me sign the account over to him for home repairs so he could support you while you traveled. He said the roof was leaking." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Torin didn't just miss my graduation. He had stolen the money meant to pay for it. He had lied to his own father and robbed his own daughter to fund his addiction. The home repairs were likely just more gaming equipment. A cold, calculated rage settled over me, replacing the guilt. I wasn't going to just let this go. I needed proof. I needed to find the paper trail of that theft to sue him and get justice for Eldrick before he passed away. I couldn't do that if Torin was living in his car, hiding his digital footprints. I decided to let him move in, not out of kindness, not out of guilt, but as a Trojan horse strategy. I would bring the enemy inside the walls to destroy him. I called him back that evening. "1 week," I told him sternly, "and you sleep in the basement on the pull-out couch. No guests, no noise." He smirked when he arrived, thinking he had broken me, thinking his manipulation about Grandpa had worked. He walked in like he owned the place. He didn't bring in clothes first. He didn't bring in toiletries or a sleeping bag. He dragged in 3 massive monitors, a tangle of cables, and a custom PC tower with flashing LED lights that hummed like a jet engine. "Where's the Ethernet port?" was the first thing he asked when he walked into my sanctuary, ignoring the beautiful architecture. He wasn't a father grateful for shelter. He was a parasite looking for a new host. I watched him set up, my jaw set. Enjoy it while it lasts, I thought, because I'm going to take you down. The first night was a nightmare. I was in my home office on the 2nd floor, trying to upload a massive set of blueprints to Delphine for a deadline the next morning. It was a multi-million-dollar project, a new civic center, and everything had to be perfect. My career depended on this upload. Suddenly, the upload bar froze at 98%. My connection dropped to 0. I checked the router. It was flashing red. I went downstairs to investigate. The basement door was open, and I could hear the rapid, aggressive clicking of a mechanical keyboard and shouting. Torin was streaming in 4K resolution, consuming every ounce of bandwidth, shouting into his microphone. "Get off the Wi-Fi," I demanded, standing in the doorway, my arms crossed. "I have work to do, actual work." He laughed, not even looking at me. "I'm a content creator now, Azura. This is my job. Don't sabotage my career just because you have some little PDF to send." My blood boiled. He was playing the exact same game he played 5 years ago, prioritizing his fantasy world over my real-world livelihood. "It's not a PDF, it's a $1 million project," I snapped. "And you aren't paying the bill." He ignored me, turning back to his screen. "Chat, can you believe this? My landlord is trying to throttle me. Everyone type L in the chat for my daughter." He was mocking me to strangers in my own house. I waited until he finally went upstairs to take a shower. The moment the water turned on, I was at his keyboard. I needed evidence of the college fund theft, but I found something equally disturbing. He had left his email open. I quickly scanned the inbox, my heart racing. He was logged into a notorious offshore gambling site, but that wasn't the worst part. I found a thread of emails to Beckett, my teenage half-brother who lived with his mom in another state. Beckett was a mini version of Torin, obsessed with gaming and allergic to responsibility. Beckett had written, "Dad, are you sure? Mom will kill me if she finds out." Torin's reply made my stomach churn. "Don't worry, I'm in. She has expensive stuff everywhere. Give me a week to liquidate some things. I'll split the cash with you so you can buy that new console. She won't even notice." He wasn't here to stay. He was here to rob me. He was actively recruiting his other son to help him fence my belongings. I took photos of the emails with my phone, my hands shaking with adrenaline. He wasn't just a bad father, he was a criminal. I had to act fast before my house was stripped bare. 2 days later, I came home from work early. I immediately noticed a gap on the shelf in the living room. My vintage camera collection, pieces I had spent years collecting from antique shops in Europe, Leicas and Canons from the 60s, was missing. 3 cameras, worth about $2,000, were gone. I marched to the basement, my heart pounding in my ears. "Where are my cameras?" I demanded, standing over him. Torin looked up, feigning shock. "What cameras? I didn't touch anything. Someone must have broken in. I told you, Azura, you live in a bad neighborhood. You really should upgrade your security." The gaslighting was immediate and practiced. He looked me right in the eye and lied. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I drove straight to the local pawn shop. I knew Torin was lazy. He wouldn't go far. The owner, Alaric, knew me. When I described the cameras, he nodded grimly. "Yeah, a guy came in about an hour ago. Matches your dad's description. Nervous guy. Sold them for quick cash." I bought them back, keeping the receipt and the security footage Alaric offered me as evidence. I now had proof of theft, date-stamped and undeniable. I needed to know who else was involved. I met Nerissa for coffee again, thinking she might be an ally since she had kicked him out. I showed her the photos of the emails between Torin and Beckett. I expected her to be furious that he was corrupting her son. Instead, she sighed, looking down at her cup, avoiding my gaze. "Azura," she said softly, twisting a napkin in her hands. "He promised to split the money with me if I convinced you to take him in. We're broke. I didn't know he was going to steal your actual things. I thought he just meant he'd ask you for money." I stared at her, feeling a cold realization wash over me. She wasn't a victim, she was his accomplice. She had played on my sympathy, using tears and stories of his homelessness to get him into my house so he could extract value from me. "You set me up," I whispered. "You knew he was going to use me. You sent him to my graduation spot knowing I'd be emotional." She shrugged, finally looking up with hard, desperate eyes. "We have debts, Azura. You have plenty. You can afford to lose a few things." I stood up and left without finishing my drink. I was surrounded by enemies. My family wasn't just dysfunctional, they were predatory. I needed a restraining order that would stick, one that would keep him away from me forever. For that, I needed to catch him in the act of a major felony, something undeniable that even Nerissa couldn't spin. I decided to set a trap. I went to my storage closet and pulled out an old, broken laptop. It looked sleek and expensive on the outside, but the motherboard was fried. I placed the decoy laptop on the coffee table in the living room, right where he couldn't miss it. I then spent the afternoon installing a high-definition hidden camera in the bookshelf, hidden between a copy of The Great Gatsby and The Fountainhead. When Torin came upstairs for food, I told him loud and clear, "I'm going on a business trip for 2 days. Don't touch anything, especially my work laptop. It has sensitive client data on it. It's worth $5,000. I grabbed a suitcase and pretended to leave, parking my car around the block and checking into a hotel 5 minutes away. I sat on the hotel bed, opened the app on my phone, and watched the live feed of my living room, waiting for the spider to catch the fly. It didn't take long. Less than an hour after I left, Torin was in the living room. He didn't just steal the laptop, he did something so brazen it left me breathless. He sat on my sofa, turned on his webcam, and went live on Twitch. I watched the stream from my hotel room, recording everything. He held up my decoy laptop to the camera lens, grinning like a shark. "All right, chat," he said, his voice booming with fake charisma. "Look at this beauty. My rich daughter doesn't even use this. It's just gathering dust, high-end specs. Bidding starts at $500 in the chat. Who wants it? He was literally auctioning my property to his 40 viewers while sitting on my couch, eating my chips and drinking my wine. He laughed at a comment. Yeah, she's gone for days. Easy money. I can ship it tomorrow, no serial numbers. He was so comfortable in his entitlement that he was documenting his own crime. I saved the video file. I had him. But then, the chat room turned chaotic. Someone had doxed him. Torin had forgotten the cardinal rule of the internet. Never reveal your location. One of his viewers, a troll he had been arguing with earlier, figured out his location based on the window view behind him. They decided to swat him. I watched in horror on the hidden camera feed as my front door was suddenly kicked in. A SWAT team swarmed my living room, shouting commands, weapons drawn. Torin screamed, dropping the laptop and throwing his hands up. Don't shoot, I'm just gaming. He yelled, shaking like a leaf. I rushed out of the hotel and drove home, my heart pounding. I arrived to find my custom mahogany front door hanging off its hinges, splintered wood everywhere, and Torin standing on the lawn in handcuffs, screaming at the police officers. But he wasn't apologizing. He was screaming that they had ruined his kill streak. He wasn't worried about the guns aimed at him. He was worried about the game. The police released him once they realized it was a prank call, but the damage was done. The repairs would cost $5,000. I handed him a formal eviction notice the next morning. 30 days, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You have 30 days to get out. You auctioned my property and got my house raided. Torin laughed in my face. He crumpled the paper and threw it on the floor. I have tenants' rights, Azura. I've been here more than a week. I receive mail here. You can't just kick out family without a court order, and that takes months. He was right. He had researched the loopholes, and he decided to escalate. Since I live here now, he smirked, I invited Beckett over. An hour later, my half-brother arrived with a backpack and his own console. Now there were 2 gamers screaming in my basement, eating my food, and trashing my house. They were like a 2-headed monster, feeding off my resources and mocking my inability to stop them. My sanctuary had become a frat house for lazy narcissists. The smell of body odor and corn chips was becoming permanent. I couldn't wait months for a court eviction. I needed professional help. I hired Rafferty, a shark of a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. He also happened to be my fiancé, a fact we had kept private to avoid family drama, specifically this kind of drama. Rafferty came over and looked at the pawn receipts, the hidden camera footage, and the swatting report. We can get him for theft, Rafferty said, loosening his tie and pouring himself a drink. But criminal charges take time to process, and he could be out on bail and back in this house terrorizing you. We need him to leave voluntarily. Rafferty looked at the ceiling, thinking, he's a narcissist, right? He thinks he's a pro gamer. I nodded. He thinks he's God's gift to esports. He thinks he's the next ninja. Rafferty smiled, a cold, sharp smile. Then let's give him a career opportunity he can't refuse. We trick him. We use his ego against him. Phase 1 of our plan was psychological warfare. Torin's lifeblood was the internet. I couldn't turn it off completely because that would be considered an illegal self-help eviction in my state. However, there was no law saying I had to provide high-speed fiber optics. I called my provider and throttled the speed down to the absolute minimum, 1995 dial-up levels, 56 kbps. The effect was immediate. From the basement, I heard a howl of anguish that sounded like a wounded animal. Torin stormed upstairs, his face red. Fix the internet, it's lagging. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea. I downgraded the plan to save money, I said calmly. Since I have to pay for the door you got broken, I had to cut costs. It's budget internet now. He started shaking. He was literally going through withdrawal. I can't stream on this, he screamed. I can't even load a web page. It's taking 5 minutes to load Google. I shrugged. Maybe you should read a book. Desperate for a better signal, he tried to use his mobile hotspot, but the basement was a bunker with no cell reception. He was forced to bring his entire rig upstairs and set it up in the middle of my living room, cluttering my beautiful space with wires and glowing plastic. This was exactly what I wanted. I responded by hosting a book club. I invited 10 of my loudest, most judgmental friends over. We sat around him drinking wine and discussing literature loudly. When Torin screamed at his screen, my friend Lark, who has a voice like a foghorn, stood up. "Excuse me," she said. "We are trying to read. Can you keep it down?" Torin exploded. "Shut up, I am working, I am a professional." He threw a headset across the room. Lark, who was recording on her phone, caught the entire tantrum in high definition. We posted it on the local community page. It went viral locally within hours. He wasn't a cool gamer. He was a middle-aged man screaming at women in a living room he didn't own. The humiliation was cracking his armor. Now for the final blow. Rafferty created a fake shell company called Apex Gaming Solutions. He spent hours building a fake website and LinkedIn page. He drafted an incredibly professional-looking email and sent it to Torin's account. The subject line read, "Recruitment opportunity, professional gamer needed." The email outlined a dream package, housing provided in a gamer villa, a $5,000 signing bonus, and a salary. The catch: the location was in a state 10 hours away, and he had to relocate immediately to start training. It was a honeypot designed specifically for his ego. Torin read the email and whooped with joy. He didn't question it. He didn't background check it. His ego was so big he believed it instantly. "See," he gloated, shoving the phone in my face, practically spitting on me. "I told you I had potential. People see my talent. I don't need your charity. I'm going to be rich." The next morning, Torin packed his bags with a speed I had never seen before. He was smug, strutting around the house like a king who had just conquered a nation. "I'm going to the big leagues," he told Beckett, who was sulking because he wasn't invited. "You stay here and hold down the fort." "Actually," I interjected, stepping forward. "Beckett leaves too. He's a minor, and since you're leaving, he goes back to his mom. I'm not babysitting." Torin didn't care. He was focused on himself. On his way out the door, I saw him shove my expensive toaster into his duffel bag. I let him. I would have given him the fridge if it meant he would leave. Rafferty stepped forward with a clipboard. "Just sign here, Torin. It's a waiver releasing your tenancy so the company can process your new housing. It's standard procedure." Torin signed the document without reading a word. It was a voluntary relinquishment of tenancy. He was legally out. Torin drove 10 hours to the address listed in the email. I tracked his progress on my phone, waiting for the inevitable call. When he finally arrived, he didn't find a gamer villa with swimming pools and servers. He found an empty, abandoned warehouse in a desolate industrial district. It was raining there, too. My phone rang. It was him. "Azura, I'm at the address. There's nothing here. It's a dump." He sounded panicked, the wind whipping into the phone. "I called the number and it's disconnected. Where is the team?" I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "You set me up," he screamed, the realization finally hitting him. "You fake." "No, Dad," I replied calmly. "I just gave you a quest. You failed." He started screaming profanities, but I hung up. He was 10 hours away, he had signed away his rights to my home, and he was completely alone in the rain. He drove back. Of course he did. He drove 10 hours straight, fueled by rage and energy drinks, ignoring speed limits. He arrived at my house at 4:00 a.m., looking like a madman. He tried to key into the house, but his key didn't turn. I had changed the locks the minute his car had left the driveway the day before. He started banging on the door, kicking the fresh wood I had just paid to replace. "Open up, I live here, you can't lock me out, I have rights." I didn't open the door. I opened the window on the second floor. Behind me, 2 police officers stood ready. I had called them the moment I saw his headlights turn onto the street. I walked down and opened the door, flanked by the officers. I handed them the document Torin had signed. "This man is trespassing," I said clearly. "He signed a voluntary relinquishment of the property 2 days ago. He does not live here." Torin's face crumbled. He looked at the paper, then at the cops, then at me. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a pathetic, manipulative sadness. He realized the game was over. As the police escorted him off the property, he turned to me, tears welling in his eyes. He decided to play the victim one last time. "I'm your father, Azura," he sobbed, reaching out a hand. "I chose gaming because I was depressed. I was in a dark place. You can't do this to family. I need help." I walked to the edge of the porch and looked him dead in the eye. "You didn't choose gaming because you were depressed, Dad. You chose yourself. You missed my graduation for a game. You stole my college fund for a game. You tried to rob my house for a game. Now you're missing the rest of my life." I signaled to the officers. Get him out of here. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Torin was forced to move in with Nerissa in a tiny studio apartment. She had finally grown a spine after realizing he had no signing bonus coming and that he had been tricked. She forced him to sell his custom PC rig just to pay the first month's rent. I didn't stop there. Rafferty helped me file a lawsuit for the stolen college fund and the cameras. We won. The judge ordered his Social Security to be garnished for the next 20 years to pay me back. I sat on my couch in my quiet, beautiful living room, enjoying the silence. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a new number. It was him. Azura, please, I just need $20 for food. I'm sorry. I looked at the text. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. I typed back 2 words. Game over. Then I blocked the number, put down the phone, and finally, truly began my life.